All right. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll go ahead and toss it over to AJ Castle for the first question. We're joined by Executive Vice President and General Manager AJ Preller. And we'll go ahead and get it started. Thanks, AJ.
Hi, AJ.
AJ?
What are your expectations for what camp's gonna look like? Maybe with certain distancing guidelines or whatnot, and in terms of how it's going to proceed at Petco Park, and I guess the constraints of doing so in a 3-week time span.
Yeah, no, there's obviously a lot there. I think it's I think the last few months have I think just in general, I think we've had to get used to just all different normal activity, and I think because of that, I think we'll be somewhat prepared. But yeah, I think that's going to be totally different. It's going to be totally different than any spring training we've seen in the past, and it'll be a condensed period of time. I think we'll get a sense to see which players have stayed in shape, and who's ready to start the season. In terms of like the work day and the practice schedule and all of that, I think that's going to look very different as well. So it's going to be a unique deal. But I think the way we've handled it as an organization really so far over the course of the last 3 months is, just kind of like take each situation as they come up and try to figure out the best possible solution and then move forward. And I think we'll do the same here for spring training 2.0.
Just a reminder to use that chat feature if anybody would like to ask a question. We'll go ahead and unmute you when it is your turn. So we'll go ahead to Dennis Lynn with The Athletic.
Hey, AJ, how's everyone doing from a health perspective, both in terms of COVID, any positive tests recently, and just on the injury front?
Yeah, no, we've I think as an organization, I think we've probably stayed lucky in that regard. I think we're still with the MLB closing the facility there or having the MLB teams close the facility. We're still waiting on some tests from the Arizona group that was working out there over the course of the last couple of days. I think overall from a health standpoint, some of the guys coming back from injuries in spring training, they've obviously had some time now to get back healthy. And would expect the crew to show up healthy. The players that we end up selecting for the 60-man and some of the little nagging things that we had there at the end of spring training. I think for the most part there hasn't been anything new that's come up over the course of the last few months that would limit anybody starting the beginning of spring training.
All right, we'll go to Kyle Glazer, Baseball America.
Hey, AJ, when MLB initially expanded rosters to 26, they put a cap on how many could be pitchers versus position players. Have there been any such restrictions now that they're expanding to 30, how many pitchers there can be?
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think with a lot of these questions, I think a lot of this is still, it's still not 100% finalized. The sense that I get, is that the limits in terms of the number of pitchers on the roster, I don't get a sense that's going to be part of, this phase of the roster, over the course of the next couple months. So, it does seem like that they're going to go from, 30-man roster to 28 to 26. I haven't heard yet about the 3-batter limit, some of the new rules that were in place for this year. We're still waiting to hear about that. But I don't get a sense that, limiting the number of pitchers, that's going to be part of, this, the set of rules that's going to govern the rest of the season for us. I don't get a sense that's going to be part of it, but until we see kind of the final rules from MLB and the roster construction, I'm not 100% certain.
Thank you.
Go to John Conniff with Mad Friars.
Hey, Jay, I was curious, how big is spring training going to be? Because we're used to having all these players around from the minor leagues and so on. So how many additional players will there be there from the minors in addition to what could be the major league roster? And what are the plans going forward for any type of minor league season or development that you can share with us now?
Yeah, no, I think it's again. I think what's been discussed has been a 60-player, I guess what they're calling a taxi squad or 60-player squad. You would eventually cut that down to 30 players that would break camp with you. There at the end of July for your first major league game. But honestly, I think exactly how we fill that out, whether we use the full 60 At what point do we use the full 60? I think all those things are still a little bit up in the air until we see exactly what the rules are for MLB and how teams are going to have to handle the all the COVID testing, the COVID situation. If you get a positive test, I think all of that is still a little bit up in the air. I think it's going to be worked out here over the course of the next few days, obviously leading up to the start of spring training. But and then in terms of minor league season, I think the focus on baseball, from Central Baseball and from the union has been to get the major leagues back. And then I think they'll start looking at the best way to develop players, and whether that is in this spring training period or that's in some other type of developmental league. I really haven't heard much new on that front about any progress on that area. I think it's going to be the first order of business for everybody is try to see if we can get the big leagues back in play, and then we'll start looking at the development component for the minor league guys.
Thank you.
Go to AJ Cassavell.
I know you didn't build this roster planning on having a DH in 2020, but it seems like you have a few options there. How are you viewing using that spot now that it's part of the 2020 rules?
I think we have some bats that we feel like it's going to give opportunity to guys to come in and compete, get more at bats, become have a regular place in the lineup. And then also you can use the position guys that are on the field and give a day off for some of the guys that regularly play the field. So I think we've been I think we have some good options that are out there. So whether it gives more opportunity to guys like Josh Naylor, Ty France, some of the guys that have been competing for spots on the field and swing the bat well. That's probably the first few names that come to mind. But then there's other guys, Franchi Cordero, Frankie Mejia, and then clearly like the Machado, Hosmer, Tatis grouping, giving those guys a day and not having to still having their bat in the lineup. So I think it gives Jason and his staff a lot of different options, and I think we'll have some different options on our roster that we can utilize that DH spot with.
Kevin Acey with the San Diego Union Tribune.
AJ, what date will your guys first be on the field, and will it be everyone, pitchers, catchers, and position players? And will you be using another site as well?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like July 1st is is kind of the first official report date. I think they're still working out the details though with the testing component. So I don't know if the 3rd will be the first workout or it'll be on the 1st. So I think we'll still get some word here from MLB in the next couple of days. Guys are starting to come back to San Diego here as over the course, and I think we'll see more and more guys come back over the course of the next week. And in terms of like pitcher catcher separation, we're not sure. I think that's still kind of waiting for the rules. Didn't get the sense this morning on a call with MLB, on a small call, that sounded like that you potentially could bring the staff, the position players and pitchers back at the same time. But honestly, I think we're still waiting for that detail. And yeah, we will look at some different possibilities in terms of, I know we've talked about it over the course of the last month, and we're still finalizing some things there, but we've got to look at some other sites as well to try to help us get through the spring training period. Some of the local facilities in San Diego, just because, there'll be a lot of bodies, and to do it on one field. I think Jason and his group, do a nice job being creative, being organized, but I think we're gonna have to look at some different facilities. Obviously in Arizona, our regular spring training facility, we've got 8 fields. We've got, all kinds of batting cages, bullpen mounds, large weight room. We're able to handle a lot of different space. Here in Petco, it'll be a little bit, it'll be different. So we're gonna have to use some different facilities here in San Diego.
Thanks.
Back to Kyle.
For when the regular season starts, has a site been selected yet for where the 30-man taxi squad will be based?
No, I think we're, again, like everything, I'm sorry, can I keep coming back? I think
a couple things. I think even if they don't agree to it being mandated.
Yeah, I don't know if that was Darren in the background or somebody, but get a little taste of his show. But no, I think we're trying to finalize that. I think we've again trying to look at a couple of different possibilities, both locally here in San Diego, and we've talked about the Arizona complex using the spring training facility. But yeah, I think what's going to happen is when you get your 30-man big league team, that team's going to go out and play a major league season, travel obviously, and go out and participate in the 2020 championship season. And then your other 30 taxi squad will be located elsewhere, and there'll be separation there. That group will go out, and it looks like practice, some inter-squad type possibilities. It doesn't look like they're going to play games against other organizations or anything like that. And probably it will be within driving distance of the ballpark here in San Diego in case we need to make roster moves, et cetera. And we'll look to have something on that front probably in the next 24 hours or so about where we're going to try to house that taxi squad when spring training breaks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Marty Caswell, extra 1360.
Thanks. AJ, how confident are you that all your players and staff can follow the protocols, all the unknown protocols that come with COVID? And what do you what do you see as the biggest obstacle into this season being started and completed, for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of confidence in the group that we have in terms of our medical team. Obviously we've all got a lot of unwanted experience over the course of the last few months with the social distancing, being all the different having the different safety and sanitizing measures that we've had to put in play. But again, I think there's a lot of motivation to do it. Standpoint, and also from you try to respect the people that you're in the building with, and I think, there's also the competitive element. I think trying to put yourself in as good a position as possible is no way to guarantee anything, but, I think we're going to try to do as good a job as we can for, educating our players, educating our staff. Obviously the compliance component, trying to make sure that everybody understands the importance of, following, any kind of measure we can to limit your exposure, limit your risk. And I think there should be a lot of motivation from everybody's standpoint to follow the rules and follow the regulations, and and it helps the group stay healthy. And you have a responsibility to the person next to you to do that. So I think it's obviously a new way of life. It's a new normal for all of us. But I would expect our staff to do a good job following all the things in place that MLB's put in place, and as an organization that we put in place.
And a quick follow-up, are any concerns that teams might try to manipulate the COVID leave list?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, again, like anything, anytime there's a rule in place. I think we've seen it in the past few years with the disabled list and different things like that. Maybe somebody's going to look at it as a competitive advantage. I think in this case, you're talking about a pandemic in the country, and a very, obviously, from a virus that's kind of, that everybody's dealing with. So I think MLB will be real strict with it, and I know we will be as an organization. So I don't think that, I know from our situation, can't speak for everything, but from our situation, we obviously got to take everything real serious and follow all the protocols and regulations MLB puts in place.
We'll go over to Mario.
Good afternoon, guys. I hope you are okay. And AJ, I want to know if you tell it already, but how was the conversation with the players getting ready for the spring training, or some players are worried about it to get a return for the activities?
Yeah, I think we're still in the process of talking to everybody since the announcement with from the union and from the PA and from baseball. So, but I think so far, I think the guys we've spoken to, guys are excited. They want to get back to playing. This is what they love doing. They love competing. They love playing the game of baseball. Being out for 3 months, I think I think they're ready to get back and play baseball here in San Diego. And I think the detail that MLB put out, you're talking about multiple documents, all kinds of experts having the ability to weigh in, check in, 108, I think it was 108 pages may have been the final document. I have to go back and check, but 100+ page document that, outlines all those health and safety protocols. I think it gave the players a lot of confidence that MLB is doing everything they can. Obviously, there's no guarantees, but doing everything they can. It's going to be a ton of testing. All the different protocols that are out there for high risk individuals. I think it gives the player some level of confidence that this is some type of health and safety bubble that is got their best interests at heart. So I think you got players motivated and excited to come back to play, and I think they also feel good by what they've seen from MLB in terms of all the different protocols that are in place to try to keep people healthy.
All right, thank you.
Back to AJ Castle.
AJ, how does 60 games maybe affect the way you strategize for a season? And more specifically, how does 60 games impact potential decisions with guys like Mackenzie Gore, Luis Patino, who aren't going to minor leagues to go to and won't have the regular workload that they would have had in another year?
Yeah, no, it's definitely different. I mean, everybody always talk here baseball being a marathon, not a sprint. This is definitely going to be a sprint. So it's it's going to be extremely unique year. It'll definitely will factor into our decisions, both roster wise and also just even strategically, like how we play certain games. And it's going to be a different different type setup for everybody. So I think. Specifics, we'll have, the next few months to kind of figure that out and get into it more on the, both the roster and exactly how that's going to play out with, who breaks with us, who's set up to help us throughout the year, when they're set up to help us, how we handle our pitching, how we set up the, the balance between pitching and position players, how Jace manages the game with, bullpen versus starter. I mean, all of those things are going to be things that, that the coaches are talking about that, I'm sure all 30 organizations are talking about. That'll all factor in here over the course of the next few months. It's definitely it's going to be a different season than your 160 long year. So I think that'll be whoever handles that the best is probably going to have the most success here over the course of the next few months.
We'll go to Adam with 97.3 The Fan.
Hey, AJ, congrats on signing the majority of your draft picks so far. Just wanted to ask what your level of confidence is in signing Cole Wilcox.
I think we've signed 5 of the 6 picks that we selected this year in the draft. I think with Cole, I think when we took him, it was with the idea that we were going to sign him. I think things have been progressing, and I think we'll keep working towards an agreement. There's been nothing's come up over the course of the last, since the draft that's been, any different than we really felt at the time when we took him with the idea we were going to sign him. Nothing's really changed from that front, but, obviously till you have an agreement, keep plugging away and, let Mark Kahn or Josh Stein and the group keep talking to his representatives, and hopefully we get something done here between now and the deadline.
Back to Kevin Acey.
AJ, what are some of the things that would help a team in terms of its construction in this sprint? Like a strong bullpen, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think every team's probably a little different, honestly, in terms of how they're situated, how they're set up. So, I mean, I think, you're still going to play to your strengths as a group and as a team. I think the number one thing is going to be health. And, this year that's obviously an even more unique factor that's probably going to be very difficult to predict. So, I think we all look at it, if a player goes down or has to go on that COVID-related injury list, in some years, you go on the disabled list, for example, and that's, a small portion of your season. This year, whether it's due to COVID or it's due to injuries, you go down on the DL, that could be your season basically, or, a large percentage of your season. So I think, the health component, that's tough to predict. I think that's going to have a big effect for sure. Outside of that, yeah, probably depth will be important, because I think, whether your starters are going to be able to go 9 innings day one, probably not, so I think having multiple options, I think will be important. Having multiple options that can plug in place of injury, or if you do have COVID-related, illnesses or situations, I think that's going to be really important. In terms of like bullpen, I've heard a lot about that. I think just quality performance always dictates whether you're going to be successful or not. Whether that's starters, relievers, position players, you just got to get guys that are gonna achieve and overachieve. And I don't think anything really changes on that front. I think the health is probably the biggest component.
Go to Troy Hirsch, Fox 5.
Hey, Jay, 2 questions. The first from an operational perspective. Has there been any word of fans being allowed to watch these games at any capacity at any point of the season that you've heard?
Yeah, I think have not heard much on that front, honestly. I think there's been some talk about, in some of the states that things have really opened up, and if they're going to have spring training there. It sounds like that's another one of those issues that'll probably get worked out, at least the spring training component of that over the course of the next few days. Regular season wise, honestly, have not heard much talk on that front either as well. So I think our focus has really been, seeing if our players can make sure that they're going to be ready to go from a practice standpoint, from a, building up innings or at bats, et cetera, and then kind of waiting for how the rules pertain to the roster and everything like that. But I really haven't heard a lot on the fan side of it. My guess is we'll get more clarity on that over the course of the next few days, and especially in the States where fans are able to go in and watch spring training games or outings or whatever it's going to be. Probably practices at this point is what it pretty much looks like for spring training as well.
And the second question that I had pertains to the short sprint, as you put it, versus the marathon. Some players may not play due to health concerns and that sort of thing. Is there a concern that there'll be an asterisk after whoever comes out on top of this, and your players might have that in a mindset, or some players might have that in a mindset that this isn't really a real season?
Yeah, I think it's just going to kind of see how things play out over the course of the next few months. It's I think everybody knows it's going to be a very different season. Again, I think what everybody's hoping is best case scenario. We go out, it's 60 games, players every single day are playing to win. Tons of energy. Guys they know every single day is going to one game in a 60 game season is going to potentially determine a pennant race or getting into a postseason situation. And then hopefully you have a great postseason and an exciting postseason, and you get to the end of the year and go, that was different, but it was at the end of the day, you want a competitive setting against other professional teams and players, et cetera. And I think that's the goal for everybody, is to look up and have that type of experience over the course of the next 2 months. Again, if it was a 1 week situation, that's a little bit different where anybody can win 60 games. I think everybody's got to be positive to look out and say you got a chance, and then some type of postseason setup. So I think in terms of like asterisk, no asterisk, I think we'll get to the end of this and kind of everybody can make their own determination how real it is for them, how real it felt. But I know what we're looking at with the Padres is it's competitive baseball, and the fans want to go see a good product and they want to see a good team. And I think you crown a champion at the end of the year. That's a championship that was won playing against the best of the best in Major League Baseball, even if it was for 60 versus 160. So I think that's the way we're looking at it.
Thank you, AJ.
We've got time for a couple more. Back to Marty.
AJ, have you heard from any players or staff members, coaching staff, that may need to opt out of playing games due to their own personal circumstances?
We haven't yet in our situation. No, I think basically MLB has they've got as part of those protocols they've got basically are able to look up and try to tier people or look into like high risk individuals, and and as an organization we'll set up certain maybe some separate accommodations for that group, et cetera. But with our group so far, I think we're in the process of kind of putting some final touches on all of that, but. It feels like, with our coaching staff, that the guys want to, everybody seems like they want to come back, work, and have not heard yet of anybody opting out for any reason.
We'll go last one with Brandon Stone, KUSI.
Greetings, AJ. Good to see you again. Just two questions, one for clarification and the other just because I'm being inquisitive. The first is the idea of service time, which I know was negotiated about. Can we get some clarity as to what happens if you have to bring a guy up, bring a guy down, how that could impact service time or not? Can you just clarify that, and then I'll get the second question.
Yeah, I think still kind of waiting for final MLB memo on exactly how it's going to work. But I think we're looking at it as when players are on your what would be to start the season your active 30-man roster instead of your 26-man roster. It eventually will go from 30 to 28 to 26. It sounds like throughout the season, they're going to get service time. So they'll get days of service similar to they were in a regular season. In terms of how that, in terms of, I probably have to go back and look a little bit in terms of, when guys come up for 2 weeks, how that ends up being, laid out for future commitment, everything like that. And I think we'd have to go back and take a look at that a little bit more, but I haven't spent a ton of time, honestly, looking too much at the service time rules and kind of waiting for a final memo from MLB to see how that plays out.
Well, I'm sure you've been thinking about a whole host of things during this time, so not surprised on that. And the second question is, we can't be absent to what's going on in the world. Have you sat and talked to your players or the people about the movement that we've been going through, cultural issues? I know your players certainly have not shied away from discussing it online. So what have you said to them, or have you had any conversation or things you might be planning to do?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we've tried to, talk to, when I've spoken to the players individually, is just be very supportive of, and understanding that, I think there's, overall, everybody's passionate about, all different things in their lives, different movements, everything like that. I think here, we want to make it be known that, in general, like, I think it's cool across the country that people are, they're speaking out, they're looking out throughout the country for what they feel like is right. And I think, throughout the United States, like, it's one thing to identify an issue. I think the bigger key to me is when you hear people start talking about solutions and what's the next step forward. And I think, to me, over the course of, I think in the last month throughout the country, I think we've seen, a lot of people identify, hey, this is another area that we look out. And whether it's, looking at race relations, whether they're looking at unity, whether it's looking at, all different areas. Like, the biggest thing is, okay, now what can we do about it? What can we do to grow the country? You can move forward. How can we support as an organization? How can I support personally? And, I think, like, really in the last 3 months, we've had some players that have some players have shied away from coming to San Diego and have done things on their own. Some guys have, come into the facility almost daily. And I've gotten to know these guys really on a different level personally. And I think it's been really cool to hear, what people are passionate about, from not just a baseball standpoint. I think we get so hung up on the game of baseball and, a lot of different times. And over the course of the last few months with everything going on throughout the country, the situation in Minnesota, some of the different protests that are out there, obviously the Corona deal. We've had a lot of time to sit down as a group and sit down individually with the players that have been coming into San Diego and find out what's important to them, find out background, find out stories. And I think those are things that, as an organization going forward that, will make me better in my role, better in my job. But it's just been really cool getting to know our players, hear what they're passionate about. And I know there'll be some things here throughout the season that, I'll be participating in more as well. And our players will be that, I think hopefully trying to put the country in a better spot. So, and then, in a tough spot over the last few months, just kind of being locked in this weird, isolated situation and having 2 players come in at a time and everything like that. You get a lot of time to spend time with the group. And, there's been a lot of conversations we've had overall, kind of finding out what's in some guys' head and their hearts. And it's been pretty interesting, honestly.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. AJ, thank you for your time. Reminder, we'll have a manager, Jace Tingler, at 4 o'clock Pacific. We sent around an advisory shortly before this call, so it'll be a separate Zoom link. So check out that advisory, and we'll see most, if not all, of you back here at 4 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Darren.